welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight's episode is pre-recorded. A reminder to you all of that fact, so if you are chatting to us and not getting a response, we probably aren't in the chat room, so don't feel we're ignoring you. We just may not be there because this is pre-recorded due to a scheduling conflict, so we wanted to get you the information, so that's why we pre-recorded it. And I am so excited to be bringing back for a second appearance on this series an amazing guest who, and if you missed the first episode she was on at the end of season 2, you might want to go check it out because tonight we're picking up pretty much where we left off and sailing through. So with that, I am going to allow my amazing, awesome, talented guest, who is also an author, to give a little bit about herself to remind everyone, and we'll then set sail.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me on again.
Thank you for coming.
My name is Erica Amoreena, and I wrote a book called Girl Stolen, A Collection of Memories, because I found out that I was a highly targeted individual, and I kept all of my events that happened to me in a journal, and about 45 different journals, but I found them all about 2 years ago. So I strung it all these memories together in a book, hoping that if anybody else is targeted and having ET contact experiences, any other contact experiences, that it can help you figure out what's happening and maybe put a stop to yours. So I also work with clients. I have a website, ericaamoreena.com. You can check it out, and it says a lot about what I do and what I help people with. I'm terrible at talking about myself.
Everybody is. It's the most fun a host has, is having everyone describe themselves. It's so awkward to either share someone's story or have them share it, and it's like, yeah, we're so taught not to talk about ourselves so much that it's like really challenging to actually sit here and
It is.
talk about ourselves.
And plus it's hard to talk about your personal private life and share stories, and especially my stories, because they're so out there and they don't sound real or believable. But like I said, I have pictures and videos, and everything I talk about, I have evidence. So I'm having a blank again.
Oh, no worries. So last time we covered the MyLabs and how you were being taken from your room.
Yeah, I had had MyLabs my whole life, but I didn't remember what was going on. You know, I was constantly mind wiped, constantly in amnesia, even in regards to what was happening in my own life. So for me, being able to write it all out in a book and look at it all, I was able to put all these little puzzle pieces together. And I figured out that I had done things like unbound myself from Greys coming in and abducting me, and they had put implants. They had been using me my entire life. But after my MyLab, when I was 50, about 2 years ago, I was so traumatized and so broken and so close to death that I just, you get to a point where you hit rock bottom, and I didn't want to die. I didn't want to just give up. And when I figured out that we are amazing, the reason why we're abducted, the reason why Greys and military agencies use us is because we are amazing, powerful people. We have abilities so far beyond anything you see in the movies. We watch Fantastic Four, Avengers, and stuff like that. We can do those things. We just forgot. And now I'm like, I was able to get rid of the Greys affecting my life on my own. I was able to get my implants that they placed out on my own. I was able to unravel why the military was using me, and I was able to close a lot of those contracts too. So I'm sharing these stories, and I'm sorry if I don't make sense, and I'm sorry if I'm all over the place, but I want other people to know that you can fight your way out. You're a lot stronger than anything happening to you. The targeting, my labs, they are just doing this because they don't want us to remember who we are.
I agree, and there's two things that you hit on that I think are worth noting. Is we always hear of the children are being taken and utilized in the programs, but people don't always necessarily realize, like you were saying, you recently had an experience with it. So they take you as an adult as well. So it doesn't just stop because you got too old. That doesn't
No,
exist in the programs.
time doesn't exist. Yeah. Um, what I recently discovered was that when I had talked about my lab on our last episode that happened to me 2 years ago, it shook my world so much. And that was one of my questions, Michael. I wanted to know, like, I am 50 years old. Like, what the hell can they use me for? I'm not young, you know? But I found out these things start with contracts that are made when we're babies and we don't know. So this was happening to me my whole life. And it was just the one at age 50, the abduction by military, that shook me so much. I feel like it was so horrible and so traumatic that it like loosened, broke open the compartments in my mind that had stored, like I was hiding from myself things that would happen to me. And after this last, my lab, it just broke everything open and I started remembering. And then, of course, when I found my journals, that was another interesting thing. I had written all of my abduction, my ET contact experiences, and what was going on in my life in journals for 45 years. I had no memory I was doing this. That's kind of creepy. But it shows that our minds are so, they use mind wipe technology, they use trauma to make us forget. Our minds are amazing at what we can do and what we can block from ourselves and just to survive. But I learned a lot about that.
It's very true. And, we kind of hit on, the fact that every one of us, that are, I don't want to use the term gifted or special, but
But we all
more
are.
in tune with our gifts are the ones that they're looking after. And it reminded me when I was like probably in elementary school, maybe middle school, that I heard about there being like a violet flame that's behind the human heart. And so I was like, oh, I bet I can tap into that. And when I would go outside and say it's like 40s, 50 degrees and everyone's like in jackets, I'll be out in shorts, short sleeves. And the second I would start to feel cold, I would literally say flame on and I would start to feel warm. And it's like I could tap into that flame and warm my body. And I had totally forgotten about
I can't
that.
believe
And then when I saw
you.
Fantastic Four, like you were saying, a lot of these movies are real. Is Yeah, I was like, there are times where it's like, yeah, I feel like I am more like the Torch
You can
or
you tap into your abilities. I can't believe you just said that though. Pause right here. I am able to do that too. I had no
okay. And now, Erica, one thing you had mentioned before in the episode when pretty sure this is where we left off to segue for this episode was you were walking towards the ocean, deciding, you know, do I have a future or not? So obviously you're here, so you chose to take the future, but what was going through your mind and led you to take the choice?
so after I had that incredibly terrifying my lab in 2022, and I had talked about how stressful it was. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. I couldn't even go to the store. I would walk down the aisles backwards so that I could see if somebody was coming up behind me. And then, like, I was such a wreck. I was not paranoid because people actually were after me, but I was leaving like traps in my room if somebody were to open the door. Like, I had like utensils would fall on them and stuff. I was so scared, and I had nobody to turn to and nobody to help me through the trauma part of it. And I was very sick and I wasn't able to even stay conscious. I was constantly fainting, panic attacks. So I decided this isn't a way to live. I wasn't suicidal, but it's not a way to live, being that terrified. So I had planned on, I lived in Pacific Grove right on the water, on these, it's like a rocky, it's like a little rocky peninsula in Pacific Grove, and the water is about 20 to 50 feet straight down, and the waves come in and they crash up. But I lived about, gosh, I'd say 100 yards from the edge. So I had gotten dressed and taken a shower. It was like 10 at night, and I had cleaned up my apartment, and I was going to go jump because it wasn't a life to be as scared as I was. And I felt like I would have some control. I could end my life instead of waiting for strangers to come end my life. Maybe it wouldn't hurt as bad. But so on my way out the door to just go walk, and I was just going to go walk into the ocean because I knew that would be and just end things. On my way out, I put my hand on the doorknob, and I was suddenly overcome with such an intense urge to sleep. Like, I had to lay down right then. And the next thing that happened is I started to feel fizzy and buzzy, like my particles were coming apart. And then I couldn't feel my heartbeat. I couldn't feel myself breathing. And I was beamed up onto a Syrian craft that was in the atmosphere of above me, above my house, above the planet. And so that's where I wanted to start talking about. I didn't go into, on our last episode, the things that had happened to me or the things that I learned about when I was up there, and I wanted to talk more about that. When I was taken, I remember looking down and seeing the roof of my house, and then I saw my town, And then I was above the clouds, and then I saw the clouds over my town. You know, it was right on the water. It was actually very beautiful to see from the sky. And I went up, and then I could see the United States. You know, every view I had, the higher I got. And I don't know how I remember this. You know, I don't. Once in the ship, I turned this way because I didn't, still, you don't know what's going on. It had never happened to me consciously before. I turned this way, and there was a man or a person, and he was wearing a blue, very blue uniform. I'm trying to look for the color blue. It's like the color of your my name right there. Yeah, the background. And he had a Galactic Federation badge on. I drew that too. And then that's all I remember. And the next thing I knew, I felt like, how do I describe this? All the trauma and all the fear and all the terror, all the heartache, everything that I experienced on Earth was lifted. My amnesia, not knowing who I was or who my soul was lifted. I was whole up there. And I got to witness things happen from the beginning of time. It was like I was being shown the entire true history of Earth, the entire true history of what happened, what my part was in it, what my role was, how many lives I incarnated into. Sorry, I just bumped my screen now. Okay. I was able to see all of my lives, and I didn't remember all of this after I was returned immediately, but slowly it was allowed to like trickle into my consciousness. I think it would have been too much all at once.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because it reminded me of, sorry folks, but I got to put this in terms of TV, is Doctor Who. And he always will say, like, he's a Time Lord. He's over 900 years old, seen a lot of things. And he's like, the human mind isn't able to comprehend the vastness of the universe. And so I was wondering how, when you said you've seen the video from beginning to now, going, how did your brain process and hold all of this? And then you said, yeah, it was too much, so had to lose some of it. And so it's like, it's funny how TV, we're told that, is just make believe. And now we're starting to learn is more accurate than we probably realize.
Right, I know. When you're not under the matrix amnesia that we are on Earth, we've got all these satellites, radio towers, just so much shit affecting our minds. But when you're under that, it's hard to think and conceptualize anything. But when you're out of it, you're able to see everything, know everything, watch everything all at once. It's quantum. It's multidimensional and quantum. So there wasn't a specific amount of time I was up there, but I was able to bring this information back down. Now, they returned me to my bed, and I woke up the next day, completely different person. I was still dressed in my warm clothes from the night before. And they allowed the information to trickle in. Like I had it all, but if it would have all hit my the front of my mind, I think it would have been overwhelming. So the following 2 years after that, every night there would be a little bit of it in a dream, or I would be doing something like washing the dishes and remember a little bit. I would be, outside walking and a little bit would come in. And then all these different pieces, of course, I wrote down in journals and then I strung them all together and I was able to remember the rest. And I think it's easier for me as a soul because I was there as a soul. I witnessed everything happen here on earth since the beginning of time. I wrote some of it.
Well, I like how you say you were washing dishes and got a memory back, because everyone, we always say, oh, to retrieve your memory, you have to think about what it is you're trying to think about or something that will relate to that. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, washing dishes is not going to trigger any memory in my mind of anything in space. And you're over here saying, yeah, I was washing dishes and I started to remember it. It's like, really?
Our minds are amazing. I know Tony Rodriguez is doing a lot of study on what the mind can do and what we're capable of knowing consciously. I just lost my thought.
We were talking about the mind and what it can do. You were getting memories back while
Anyways,
washing
yeah.
dishes.
So for me, it was easy because my soul, I'm not just from one planet or one race. I am like a mix. I don't know. I was created to come here, so I don't know if it's unusual to have all that memory come in, or if it's just because of who I was as a soul. But I know that like people that come to me that want to remember SSP memories or their past lives, you don't have to force it. You can do your best to unbind from AI, not watch so much TV, not scroll so much. That always helps you remember your own stuff. But when you are ready, when your heart is ready, when it's time for you to remember, you'll remember. You're not going to miss it. You're not going to go through life without it because it's in all of us. We all have our entire universe, our everything inside of us. Every life we've lived, every event that's happened to us, everything that we would want to know is inside of us. We just have to access it inside of us.
It's interesting when you say that, because I was blessed over one of my birthdays to be in Egypt. And I was walking up like the Avenue of Sphinxes towards Temple of Luxor for Ramses II, and I couldn't help but think, and a lot of people were thinking this that I talked to that were there, is normally when you go and visit a site, you're like, ooh, look at that, ooh, look, that looks fun, that looks fun. But here, our thoughts were of, I'm walking through the footsteps of the ancients. I'm walking where pharaohs have walked, where cultures have walked, and it's the same. It doesn't feel any different. It's like I can feel everyone who's ever walked this path. And yeah, it's like, and did I have past lives in Egypt? Most likely.
Most likely. It's usually when you feel something so strongly, you're either a part of it or you were a part of it in another life, or you have something to do with it. Like anybody who's even interested in SSP stuff, you're involved. Interest in space stuff, you're involved. Interest in whatever, it's a part of you and you're a part of it. I'm so jealous that you got to go to Egypt.
Well, I've had a lot of lucky trips in my life, and one of the things that, too, I'm not sure if I mentioned in the first episode, I'll mention here with you being on, is I like how you put the term "you were created," because I have memories as well of several star races and several things, and I am me, but I've always felt like there's humanity and then there's me.
Yeah,
There's
yeah. You're
I
probably the same too, yeah. I would
and
love to look at your chart and find out for you if you ever have time.
sure.
um, yeah, it was remembering is not just a vision or remembering information. Everything that is true, you're going to feel. You're going to feel it. It's going to resonate in your entire body, not just like an image in your mind. And that's another way to distinguish between like a false memory and a real memory. So when you're walking on Egypt, you're taking in your body everything that's ever happened since the beginning of time, and your mind, in the back of your mind, is like sorting through it and trying to place it for you. When I was up there with the Syrian ship, I was shown my I remembered being shown my place in Atlantis and what I was doing when Enlil dropped a comet on the planet, to completely end the whole Atlantean times. But I remembered that, and that was intense. That was very intense to witness. So I had to get over that. When I was in Atlantis, I remember he had allowed a comet, and I think it was north of us, the north part of the planet. He had allowed a comet to completely hit Earth, and I remember Atlantis being completely soaked from the waves of what this comet did. On top of that, it was freezing because the comet had done so much damage that the pole started to shift. But I remember running from there's a temple, a complex that had a white pyramid. That's where I worked in Atlantis. I think I was a priestess there. I know that I worked with crystals. I still work with crystals. But I remember I waited till the very last minute to get as many people as I could onto my craft, which was an ark that was underneath Atlantis, was built around it. This shows how old my soul is. I was there. I remember the walls starting to fall, people screaming, the sky was dark, lots of really big waves. I had something in my hand. It was like this size. I don't know if it was actually a crystal. I'm pretty sure it was. But the crystal I was holding had vital information on how to restart a civilization after destruction. And my sole purpose, my sole job at that time when Atlantis was going under, was to get that information and bring it into the ark. And I remember thinking, everybody was panicking and running, and I'm thinking, I'm going to have to take this information, keep it safe, and incarnate on Earth until I can do something with it. I remember thinking that then.
Did you ever meet the pilot?
That's funny you said that. I'm pretty sure I was one of them. And I'm pretty sure there are like 8 pilots for each arc that are here on the Earth right now. But yeah, I'm going to say mine That's just what it feels like. It was me, part of me. Anyways, I went in. I remember not wanting to close the doors because there were still people that needed to be saved, but I couldn't. So that's really hard because you're not just remembering events, you're going through the emotions of the events that you remember, and that is not an easy task at all. So I'm glad that I was allowed to have this information trickle in and not completely emotionally overwhelm me. It's interesting, though, that I remembered thinking to myself, wow, I'm going to have to just incarnate over and over again on Earth until finally Enlil is taken out and the darkness on the planet is removed and humanity has a chance to heal. It's crazy. It's just crazy. I know that sounds crazy, but now I'm having,
and what's the crazy part about it is people view history in like terms of like a millennia or eons, and eon has no real concept of length. It's just longer than a millennia, so they call
yeah,
it
it's
an
a
eon.
time period. Yeah, I think the word was a time epoch, epoch. It's just a chunk of time.
Yeah, but a lot of people want to sit there and say, well, the darkness has only been here for 2,000 years, give or take. And then when you go into BC, and this is where, to me, the timeline gets funny, is because I don't know who decided where year zero was.
Right,
But
right. Who was it? Some man?
so we have 2,000 years since day one, where someone decided this is year zero, this is 0 point for time. And even that has been altered because we were on a 13-month calendar, now 12
Right,
month. So you got to accommodate for that too, and people don't.
right. It's
And
all
BC goes backwards. So you could go 4,000 years ago is really to year 2000 BCE, which means you have gone to 0 point and then
and then back.
beyond 0 point. So that is like you got to stop and think. Wait a minute, how are we able to go beyond 0 point? Because 0 point would be the beginning, but
It's
yet,
all it's
yeah,
all so confusing. There's so much misinformation that it's almost impossible to even find anything that's true. But from my point of view up there, I would say it's been about 460,000 years that we've had a matrix control system on this planet, and that the darkness has been, and I say darkness, I'm talking about how the Nebu came, the Greys and the reptilians, and I'm not talking about the reptilians that were already here. The ones that, the ones that Enlil controlled, the ones that worked for him, that got into the governments, that got in and created dissension. When I knew at that time in Atlantis that there was going to come a time where that was removed, and then I would have to go to work again with my arc and my information. And that time is now, which is fascinating to me. But yeah, the timing everybody else has is a little bit off.
well, what I find interesting is if you look at information and how it's given, Edgar Casey, the Sleeping Prophet, if you guys are familiar with him, if I'm not mistaken, this was around the time that he said Atlantis would rise. And so everyone interpreted that as the landmass would rise up and
Right,
reveal
right.
itself. And I'm sitting here thinking now, hearing like your story, going, no, the information about Atlantis is going to resurrect itself
Right. And
and
the people that
return.
were part of it, I believe, even I'm on Facebook and I can name maybe 6 or 7 people that I know were in Atlantis and were doing, some of the work. It's so fascinating to me to know that I'm able to recognize people from their energy signatures that I worked with 450,000 years ago. It's fascinating to me. That's how I recognize you from, we were just talking about the Imperial Empire and First Order Star Wars, which were really the Orion Wars. And you know how I remembered you burying your weapon on Mars.
Right.
Where was it? It was in this desert. It was like
Ship's
I write about it.
graveyard.
I write about it in my book. It was a place on Mars where after the Orion Wars, we hid our ships, and a lot of us were so tired of fighting. It was like a graveyard, but you buried your lightsaber there too.
Yeah.
Oh, I remembered last night because I looked into that a little bit. I don't know if you've ever done this here on Earth, but you erected a little bit, bad choice of words, sorry. You put rocks like a cairn. I don't know how to say that word, Cairne. You know how you stack rocks?
Yeah. CAIRN.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cairn,
Arn.
cairn. But you created one of those over it. I don't know. I remembered that just now.
It's funny you say that because when I was on a cruise, and I think I was in Aruba at the time, I actually did stack stones and
Oh
created
my
them.
gosh. I thought so. Yeah, I love that because you wouldn't have remembered that that was a memory. It wasn't something that you're like, oh, I'm just going to do this
Well, and
before.
it was, I love how you pointed out before I said that I had done it, going, I saw you creating one, and I was like, yeah, I that's the one that jumps out at me, but I may have done it twice, but that's the one that jumps out in memory, and it's like, yeah. And I love how doing these shows, it's like information flows back and forth and is so synchronistic in timing.
Yeah, you get little bits and like I get triggered. My memory gets triggered by things that you say, like, oh, I remember more. um, so after, I was up on the ship. I'm seeing all of this. I saw all my lives. I saw how I was connected to source. I saw that I was a being that existed in every dimension up to source. And I have conscious recollection right now at this point of all those different selves. And I can contact them and they help me like with my clients. So it's a good thing that came out of all that darkness. Um, when I was returned and I was on my bed that day after learning all of this, I was a completely different person. I had been terrified. I was still nervous and terrified of being abducted again, but my star family, because they had removed some of my amnesia, I was more solidified in who I was as a soul, and I felt hopeful for the first time in my life. I felt like I really do have family somewhere that loves me because I never got to experience that here on Earth. I had parents that were handlers. Like everything that I experienced growing up was by handlers. It was all created to keep me really messed up or get me to kill myself. But I digress. um, I was a completely different person after returning and realizing that I'm a part of something bigger and that, I've got people watching over me. So that was exciting. But then what happened was I'm like, okay, well, if you guys are there and you're my star family, then I don't want to be my lab anymore. And I started thinking, if you're able to abduct me when I'm about to go, get rid of my body envelope, why couldn't you? I was in victim mentality still. I'm like, why couldn't you guys have prevented this? Or why didn't you guys prevent that? And like a teenager, I got angry at my star family. Really mad. Like, why do we have to suffer so much if you're there and you're able to like do that? Why can't you abduct me like before I'm being hurt or beat up or targeted? I was angry for a while. Um,
Rightfully so.
well, yeah, yeah, because the stuff that happened was dark, it was because I was in victim mentality, and that's not a good place to be. Because when you're in victim mentality, the agencies can abduct you so much easier. The Greys can abduct you so much easier. Their technology relies on our trauma to work. This is how, like, you could be abducted in the next minute and you put right back and you wouldn't know it, except you'd feel like shit after if they did something negative to you. It's that easy. So, like, I'm telling my star family, no, this is bullshit. You guys don't have to go through it. You don't have to go through this. You got to do something about it. Then I'm reminded of my time up there, and I'm reminded of what I was thinking when Atlantis was completely being destroyed and I was walking into my ark and had to close the door. Humanity has to save themselves by themselves. I incarnated over and over and over and over again to be able to bring that information here now and show people how they can break free, how they can heal. So I couldn't be mad at my star family anymore because I had signed up for all of it. I wanted to know everything about what was going on the planet in this incarnate. I was born in 72. I wanted to learn as much as I could about what the dark side was doing on this planet, the Imperial New Order, So I signed up for it. I signed up to go through military abductions, to go through secret space programs. I signed up to be trafficked off world. I signed up to go through a life, growing up with satanic ritual abuse, all of these things. Like, I signed up for the darkest of the dark to happen to me so that I could find my way out of it and then help other people find their way out of theirs. Because now that I know, who else is more qualified? I've been through it and I survived it. Who else is more qualified to get others, out of their contracts and their agency deals or their SSP lives, or from all this stuff that's going down.
Right, and one of the things I love is we look at like the movie The Matrix and the whole trilogy of The Matrix. Well, actually, there's more than 3 movies, but that aside, we're focused always on there being Neo is the one that's freeing everyone. But who freed Neo? We forget
Yeah.
about there were people already freed,
Exactly.
and everybody that was freed was like, well, we need to free the one. And it's like in essence, we're buying into the program of has to be one specific person who's going to be the quote Messiah, who's going to save
And that is a program.
humanity.
Yeah, that's a program.
And meanwhile, every one of them are free, going in and helping free people. And by definition, that's the Messiah. You're saving all these people, but you don't look at yourself as being the one who has the
Right.
power to do it. And it's like, but yet, what's interesting is throughout the growth of Neo, everybody is there giving him advice, telling him how it works, how
Right.
everything, how he can do what he can do. And it's like,
But he did it.
you hit it on this is, how can we teach someone how to do something unless we're able to do it?
Right.
So that's what I think is one of the hidden messages in Matrix is we're all the one.
We are all the one. Um, the reason why a lot of I don't like the word starseed,
Starbeam.
star beings, star children. The reason why I lost that thought. Oh, the reason why a lot of us are born into very dark, abusive families is, and having a mother or a father or a sibling as a handler, or and having handlers to begin with, is because they're meant to keep us feeling disempowered. And if we're disempowered, like you said, how can any of us believe that we're the one? That's the whole purpose of having handlers. It's the whole purpose of everything that happens to us is to disempower us. If you don't let it disempower you, they look for us to want to give up. Especially people that have gone through SRA and dark programs, and they want you to give up. They want you to fail, because what happens if somebody doesn't and someone breaks out? They're going to show, that's just the way humanity is, they're going to show everybody else how to break out, and that's what's happening now. But I
Right.
found out that's why I was so targeted my entire life, is because they wanted me so scared not to share any of this. And what's amazing now is I have people come to me that want this help, that are ready, that know that this is like, they know that they're a part of something and they're scared and they don't know what it is. I have so much love and passion for doing what I do now, having gone through it, being able to help another person in any way get out of their, prison, or get away from their handlers, or figure out who's targeting, or figure out who they are as a soul. It is the most beautiful, powerful thing in the whole world. And I'm having like amazing feedback from my clients. They're coming back more and more and more.
Right.
We're doing this. We're breaking out of this.
Right. And one of the things I want to say about being in the programs is not everyone's experience is the same. So if you feel like you don't have a handler, don't think that that doesn't mean you were in the programs. You may not. And
Everybody does.
your function in the program was different, maybe. And so your handler isn't making themselves known, or
They
you,
won't. You won't know who's a handler. It's usually a person in your life that you love so much, so you don't want to get them out of your life, but at the same time, they bring you down. or they keep you kind of in a box. It's hard. It was really hard to find out that my own parents, it's hard for anybody to find out that their parents are not who they thought they were. I think that was the hardest thing for me to go through, was finding out that, because I loved my parents and I knew I knew I'd had a hard upbringing, and I wanted to be able to heal my parents too, but to find out that they had sold me into the military and that they had done most of the damage, it's hard. And that's, I see a lot of that with my clients. Like, how do you believe in yourself when your parents don't even want you? Or it's a lot to get through.
It is. And yeah, so yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So, because I know some people, and like me, I was like, I don't know if I have a handler, who it would be. And so I don't, in my mind go, well, then I'm not in the SSP.
Oh,
So
I don't think there's
that's what I
anyone
wanted
on
to
earth that isn't.
clarify is, yeah, because a lot of people talk about, oh yeah, I know my handler, I met my
Yeah,
handler.
you don't have to meet specific criteria. It is different in each case, in each person's case. And the way that the matrix, the society, the family unit is, the person is placed into, a unit that keeps them from remembering. I can't explain it.
No, I
But
mean that, and that's what I wanted to make clear is it's different for everyone. So anyone who tells you if you're not this way,
yeah,
then you're not.
that's a handler.
Yeah, be, have your mind up, your guard up, and really look at, what are you feeling from this person? Does this resonate? And if not,
Yeah. Do they
walk
lift
away.
you up? Do they lift you up, or do they bring you down? It's the easiest thing. If they bring you down, they're probably a handler. And the thing is, my parents, as much as they tried to kill me, didn't know that they were doing that, because handlers don't know that they're handlers. They won't remember. My mom is also German, so it wasn't just military. She had, as a child, gone through MK Ultra, and she had been abused and she had been traumatized, and she didn't fight. She gave up. She surrendered. She said, I'll do whatever you want, just don't hurt me, kind of thing. So it's never anybody's fault that they're a handler. It's just the way it's set up. These abuses have been happening since the beginning of time.
Yeah, and
Your parents, your grandparents.
and it's interesting the connections that you start seeing amongst everyone is like a lot of people will have military family members, or like just now hearing say your mom had German descent. I have German descent. And so could that be a reason why I picked for stuff? Very well could be.
It is, yeah. There's a lot of reasons.
And so it's important to look at commonalities, but it's also to look at as important to look at differences, because even though you have all the things in common, doesn't make it so.
Right. I
It's
remember people asking me, I was working with a multidimensional energy intuitive, Rebecca Rose Barfoot. I had 3 sessions with her to help me kind of see what I was up against and if I was making any progress. I was going to make a point. I just lost that. Sorry.
No, it's fine. We were talking about how, everyone's different and
Okay, I got it back. Um, so she kept asking me, "Are you sure nobody in your family's military?" Because she kept saying that I had been, my own family, but then I find out that it was through the Freemasons that had a friend in the military, and it was a friend of the family. So there's a lot. Like, I'm 52 years old, and everything, there are books written about my family, but you don't see the dark, you can't easily uncover the dark stuff. Like, you're not going to have like your grandfather say, "Yes, I was a Freemason and I gave my soul to whatever, and I made agreements to do this." They keep those things hidden until, sometimes they're on their deathbed and talk about it. But I had nothing to go by with my own case. I couldn't find the military connection.
yeah, and
So,
there can even be cases like where they take it to the grave because they don't
yeah,
know themselves and
right.
find
Because
out
they're used
after
to.
and being like, oh,
So I'm going to jump back into my story here. I was returned and a completely different person. I think that I also had more of my soul come in before I was returned on that night. But the funny thing is that the next day after this benevolent abduction, I was suddenly not able to walk near the ocean. I wasn't able to go near the edge. I had woken up with a severe, severe phobia of heights and of the ocean. So it was a little joke by my star family that they were like, "You're not going to jump again." No, I can't even go near it now. I did not have that phobia before the abduction. Um, what I learned is that when you have a benevolent abduction, I don't know how, but the military will know. The agencies know. They must be watching for that stuff. I don't know how yet, but every time there's a benevolent abduction for me, a few nights after, I will have another MyLab because they want to know where you went, who you were with, what information you were given, and then they want to scare you again, so that it's just very dark and abusive what they do. So
yeah,
even though I was having this, knowing that I have this amazing star family, I am this soul, this is my purpose, the agencies and the military doubled down on me. And it wasn't fun. I ended up with such PTSD from that. And then it was just too much physically. I couldn't work anymore. I had to end up moving back home with my mom. Now, at the time, I didn't know that she was handler. I didn't know at the time, I didn't know anything. I thought, okay, I'll go home and I'll rest and I'll get better and I'll figure this out. But yeah, I think that was planned by the military too. So when I got home, now moving back home, I'm back in the city where I was raised in Fresno, California, and driving by some of the places where I remembered bad things happening. It happens all the time. When I'm driving around town, I'll have a memory of something, and then like my old Christian school that I grew up from age, let's see, from preschool to 8th grade, I was in a private Christian school. And this is how I was pulled into SRA, and then I was pulled into a lot of the really dark agencies. They were able to, because of the way it was set up, they could just pick me up straight from school. No parents questioned it. A lot of what happened to me was done in broad daylight. It wasn't like at night in the middle of the night from my bed. It was from school. It was from so-and-so's house. It was just such a dark nightmare. But I'm back, I was back in Fresno, and I was trying to get better, and I was trying to figure out why I was having such issues remembering things, why was my life so hard. Then I find out that I have a lot of my entire energetic body is completely entwined with that of a group of grays. So learning that, I just got so angry. They had sabotaged my entire life. The grays had implanted me. And I guess I had made, when I was a child, because I didn't have a mom or a dad that was loving to me, the grays kind of came in and they were like, we're your mom and dad now. We're the ones that love you. They don't love you. And as a kid, what are you going to choose? You're going to choose the person being nice to you. You're a kid. You don't know any better. So I had figured out that all this confusion that I lived with my entire life, this brain fog, I had a voice. Every time I had a thought, there was a voice in my mind that would say, no, that's stupid. You're stupid. Don't think that, constantly beating myself up, but it wasn't me. I found out that it was a gray that had been assigned to do that to me for the rest of his life and the rest of my life. Finding that out pissed me off so bad. I was just fighting for my life, and then to find out that they're doing that. One night I got really, really angry, and it was really late at night, and I started screaming at the grays out loud. I'm like, under no circumstances are you ever to be near me. I want all the implants out. I want all deals cut. I want any agreements I made with you as a child under duress. Those aren't deals anymore. I want out. I want you away from me. This is done. And I mean, I was so angry. I must have called on all my power as a human being. Like, I was so done with being messed with, and I was so traumatized from them that it just all funneled into this anger, this rage at the grays. I demanded that they remove any devices, any thoughts, any programs. And then I went to bed. And like within an hour, stuff started happening to me. I laid down and I was just thinking, like, I just can't believe how many people make my life hard. I was so upset about it. And then all of a sudden I'm looking up and, falling asleep, your room is dark. And I see this like cloud, kind of like bluish. It was like bluish purple cloud come into my room. And a face peeked out of it. And the face, let me see if I have a picture. It was kind of like blue, like that. But in my room, I felt something go into my head and start moving things around. I felt pinching sensations. I felt, it was so creepy, just movement on the inside of me. And then I fell asleep. The next morning I woke up, I didn't remember, when you wake up, first thing, you don't remember exactly what happened the night before. But I woke up choking because my nose was bleeding so bad. So I ran to the bathroom and grabbed a wad of paper towels. And I went like that. and it was just gushing, you know. That's always for me was a sign that I'd been messed with by the Greys even as a child. I always had bloody noses in the morning. But this morning, like it was coming out. When I pulled the towel away, there were little black metal, um, I don't know what they're called. There was a little tiny metal ring. It was so tiny. There was a little black, it was so microscopic. It fit like at the end of the end of a toothpick. But these things came out with my bloody nose, and I was so that at that moment I'm like, oh wow, I remember yelling at them last night, and I actually asked for this, and it actually happened. And I can't tell you, that's a shock in itself. Like, that's shocking, because when you're physically holding proof, it makes it real, and then you have to like face that. So wow, I felt amazing. I felt like, oh my God, I got things out of me just because I demanded it. Like, it worked. I'm gonna need to take a break.
And what's interesting is I wonder, with you saying, having those black bits, so tiny in the blood, that like I've had instances where I would blow my nose when it's bloody and there'd be looking like black stuff in it, and I was always told, oh, that's dry blood.
Right.
I
Well,
wonder, now.
I bet I know. Everybody has to watch their bloody noses now. Look for metal stuff in it. I'm learning that, like, these beings that were meant to oppress us, they're not smarter than us. I mean, some of them, like the reptilians, are psychic, but we have the power. And I bet, like what you're talking about, I bet that you on your own, or your star family, because as children we're really close with our star family, even though we don't remember. They're close with us, and they'll do things to help us sometimes. And I bet that you had a little bit of help, and yours came out, and they just probably put them back in again.
Yeah, and
They do that.
one of the things I noticed too is, so, little TMI gross info coming up here
I
for a
just
second,
talked about
everyone. Is
blood.
if I like have a spot on my leg or arm or somewhere that's scabbed over, I am constantly opening that scab up to let air in on it, and it's like I feel like I'm cleaning the blood out by, if it bleeds out, I'm like, okay. And it's really short, it's like probably not even like 2 minutes of bleeding really profusely, and then it's like stops,
I
creates this like
wonder.
film, and then it scabs over. But there are times when I would open the scab up, and we're used to seeing like red, like scarlet red blood.
Right.
Well, mine would come out looking almost black.
Oh, interesting.
And so now I'm wondering too, is like, was that the body kicking out an organism or something that
Or
wasn't
black
supposed to
goo,
be
or
in
yeah.
there? Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but even if you had like the worst disease or infection, if you stood in your power and you demanded it be gone, you could heal yourself just like that. Any human being can. With It's amazing how powerful we are, and we just don't remember. We just don't remember. That's it. We just need to remember.
Yeah, and I actually, you got me thinking about something too. And I'm curious, with your background, if this ever happened to you. But I have a distinct memory of being elementary school age, and my bed faced a window that faced the neighbor's house, so not like I was looking out on a field or anything. And one night, I remember looking at I was falling asleep, twilight state, like you were saying, where you're not fully asleep,
Yeah,
but
not fully awake. Yeah.
and I saw two yellow eyes staring in from the window.
Wow.
And I freaked out, ran and got my parents, and when I got back, nothing was there. And the next day, I went to look. I don't remember my parents went with me, but there was no footprints. There was no evidence of anything there. And I'm wondering, have
What
you
color
ever?
yellow?
It
Because
was like kind of like
I used to see
amber
yellow eyes.
yellow, like
Like
kind of like
trying to see
um.
the color.
So, did you see the
That
movie
one.
Jurassic Park?
Yeah,
You know
like
when it
the color of the
shot
dinosaur.
the ball of
Okay, so that
amber?
like orangey yellow.
Yeah, it was like
Okay,
a really dark yellow. It wasn't as orangey, but it was like it was like a dark yellow,
and
which
did
is
they glow?
weird.
Did
Yeah,
they glow?
I
I
think
had um I had a reptilian that watched me. Well, they watched me my whole life, but I remember as a child in my bedroom, he would stand in the corner and he could disappear, but I would still see his eyes glowing, and they were that color that you're describing. And at the time, I don't even remember if I saw slits or pupils because that's not in my consciousness, to look
right.
to make sure. You're just seeing scary eyes watch you. But
Yeah,
yeah, that
and what was interesting too is like I thought nothing of it, and then a little bit later, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Never Ending Story.
yes.
The nothing, the wolf creature had yellow
Oh,
eyes and was always coming out of the darkness, and it's
oh
like
my gosh.
I I was like, "Oh my god, did I experience the nothing?"
What did you feel when you saw it?
When I saw it in the movie, I was like, "I've seen that before," but it only happened once that I can recall.
Do you remember if you were scared, or did you call your mom because you were scared, or
Not in the movie. In the movie, it's like kinda I feel like because it happened so long, like, sometime after, I was like, "No, I'm safe because I seen it and I'm still here." So I
okay?
think my mind was like, "Yeah, you can't hurt me. You're there. You're not here," kind of feeling.
Yeah. Well, that's
Whereas
good. I was always
yeah,
scared. The ones that would watch me would terrorize me. They would lift up my bed and like it would come off the ground a little bit and do this, and then it would be dropped just enough to scare the shit out of me. And then what they would do, they would like make sounds of like things falling inside my wall. They would scrape on my wall. They all kinds of things to get me to be afraid. And they were always there. Like I don't remember ever being able to have a peaceful night's sleep. I always had somebody watching.
yeah, see, I grew up with shadow beings being around
Yeah.
and and I feel like I only got the yellow eyes once because of
That you
how I
remember?
reacted, and I feel like maybe, I wonder now because I can only recall it once and really resonate with it being a one-time deal.
I
If
wonder if you weren't scared and they were like, well, we're not going to do that again because they
Well, no,
wanted a different reaction
I
out of you.
ran out of the room, and so
Oh,
I
okay.
feel like it might have been we weren't trying to scare you. We were here to protect you, and
Oh,
because you got scared, we're
yeah.
not gonna make ourselves visible anymore. We're gonna
Yeah.
stay in the shadows, so to speak.
Yeah. I know a lot of the benevolent beings that are, if we don't have understanding that they might look different than us, they really do worry that they're going to scare us, and they'll try to put on the most pleasant appearance so that we're not so startled.
Yeah. But
Um,
I do feel like the wolf aspect of the nothing fits who was outside my window because I resonate with wolves and dragons.
so
And so,
maybe it was your dragon.
yeah, and it was like the first meeting, and it was like, yeah, this didn't go over so well.
Because
What?
I feel like if it was something that was not, if it was something that was there to scare you, yeah, you're going to run out of your room, but you're going to say to me now, yeah, I was terrified. So if you didn't have that initial, I was completely terrified, maybe it was your dragon. And he was like, oh, I don't want to scare him. I'm just going to
Yeah,
I'll keep my eyes closed.
which would make sense is I never looked at on the roof were there prints, and if it's a dragon,
Oh,
he could have been on the
gosh,
roof looking down with his
that
neck
would be
into
so
the
cool.
room, and that's why there's no footprints.
And I think that they're all in a different dimensional space, so you're not going to ever see proof or footprints. If it was like a my lab, you'll see physical evidence because they do some work on the 3D plane. That's so cool though.
Yeah,
Yo, dragons. No,
and
I've seen those dragons are very protective.
yeah, and
Protective.
one thing that's interesting now that I think about it, when I was growing up, is I grew up in the age of GI Joe and He Man and all of that. When I would play with my GI Joes, if I said, "Oh, they were captured by so and so," I would wrap them in tape so they would actually look like they were captured.
Wow. Like
And I would actually, I can't believe I'm about to admit this, but my parents had to sit me down and explain this to me. I would, if a vehicle I said got damaged, I would melt part of the vehicle to show damage. I was into total realism, and when I was done with one of the matches, I thought it was out, so I put it in the trash can, and it caught the trash can on fire. And that's when my parents were like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I was doing battle damage to this, and I thought the match was out and put it out." And they're like,
battle
"Why are
damage.
you destroying your toys? Stop doing that to your toys. This isn't going to recreate itself back so you have a new look. It's forever going to be that way, and that's not what you should be doing." And so it was like, but what I'm thinking now is how interesting that I was into the realism of if captured, you were bound. If you had battle damage, there was battle damage. And not all damage can be fixed, so the vehicles would always have that. And it's
Like
interesting.
you knew what war was like you knew.
Yeah. And I was into the realism of it, not the cartoon version of, oh yeah, so and so,
And how
they
old were you at
did.
that time?
I would say I was probably maybe between 6 and 12.
Those, and I see that at those ages are when we start, um, like when I was that age, I was remembering that I'd already been to Mars at that age, and I was trying to get off planet again. So when I was 7 and 8, I was building these like hang gliders, and I would get hefty bags, and I would get 2 sticks, and I would really with a lot of duct tape, and I'd bring them to school because I was remembering being a pilot on Mars, and I was trying to bring that into my play here on Earth and live it. Like I remember I wrote about that in my book too. I remember trying to get a really big balloon and tie it to my lawn chair because I really wanted off planet. But
Yeah.
I was in first and second grade. So how does someone get that even in their mind? Like, how do you know about the realism of battle when you're 6 and 7 years old?
Yeah,
You don't unless you'd been there and been through it.
yeah, and the other thing that was my dad being an engineer, my favorite toys that I would have growing up was called constructs, and they were blue, almost like dye that had ends on all sides that you could snap a piece to, and you could build stuff. Well, I wrote it off as being a little boy, his imagination, but I would build either ships that could fly, ground vehicles that had ships that could fly attached,
Round vehicles.
or
Yep.
yeah, and I also would always have swords around. Like if I didn't have a stick, I would build a sword. And I would always so it's like I always had it growing up, and I never thought about, but yeah, I would develop like little mobile command centers that
That's
is
all.
had little like canopy pods that I would say would snap off and be like, okay, they're gonna go scout. And then when they were done, they would reattach,
See, if
share
you
what they
hadn't,
learned.
you wouldn't know that. Like, you can't just have that in your memory unless you've been there. Like, even whether it was a past life or you'd been pulled into the SSP, like you can just watch children and you'll know. And especially at that age, 6 or 7, that's where I see it the most. 6, 7, 8, 9. You'll see children incorporate what they remember that they were a part of into their everyday play. It's fascinating. It's fascinating what you can learn.
Yeah, and the funny part is they had purple for the alien looking devices, which would be smooth helmets that came to like a rounded front and under to give them kind of like a spacey look. And the humans would just be like just looking like they're in a suit
Normal.
with a helmet
So you
and
knew the difference
attached.
between beings. Yeah.
And
That's
I would always
fascinating.
combine them.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because we it was humans. And do you remember in the Orion Wars? Because that's probably what you're referring or what you're remembering. I know that there were humans and there were different kinds of ETs, but do you remember what specific kind? Because
I
I know that we all
remember,
worked together.
yeah, I remember there were a few felines. There weren't very
Yeah,
many.
I remember
There
felines.
were, I want to say there were a few avians, but avians were almost extinct, I think, at this point. But definitely feline, and
I
I
remember
want
beings with no hair, but I don't like blue skin. Do you remember any blue skin beings?
there were, and it's like my mind wants to jump to saying Andromedan because that's what everyone kind of says now is the Andromedans are blue skinned, and I'm like, I don't know if it
No,
was,
there's so many races that are
but
blue skinned.
there was blue
That's
skin, there was brown skin, red
yeah,
skin,
every color. Yeah.
and I even want to go as far as to say there was a small group of could have kind of reptile features, but didn't act like who we were, fighting against. It was like
Right.
kind of like I don't know if they were like considered like captured and were just helping,
There were.
or
I know from my memory, there's reptilian beings that were benevolent that were working, and they're not fully reptilian. They're like a mix between a very benevolent Lyran race and a benevolent reptilian race. They were mixed, but I even have a guide right now that looks like that. She's absolutely beautiful. She has a human body. She has reptilian eyes that are yellow, but just gorgeous. She's absolutely beautiful. Like, no hair, but she's an amazing warrior, and she gets shit done.
Yeah. I mean, and I remember we were good. I mean, a small group of us could do a lot,
A lot.
but over time it got to be where it's almost like the Star Wars, Special Order 66, where everyone we were working with that we thought were friendly all of a sudden turned on us. And it was like, oh yeah, we're not going to be able to win this because
Changed allegiances or just
it
couldn't.
just well, I think my feeling was I think is it was starting to feel like a never ending. It's like what we were losing the point of what we were even starting
Even
it for.
starting doing it for you.
And so it was like we could keep going and doing this forever or we could stop. And one of the things that's interesting is I started watching a Transformer cartoon recently that I had never really paid attention to. And one of the scenes was the two adversaries that was the commander of the light side, commander of the dark side, were talking, and the light side is trying to get the dark side to join forces so they can defeat an even darker enemy that's rising up. And the light side, being Optimus Prime, if you're into Transformers, says to Megatron or Galvatron, I forget which name he was going by at the time, but he says, we've been at this for 4,000 years. I think it was, or 4 millennia, or 4 million years. It was some large number. And one of the humans that's around that's helping the Autobots goes, don't you think if nothing's changed in all
Right.
that time, you guys should just stop? And it's like, yeah,
Right.
it's like we could easily fight for millions of years, but what's the
I
point
I
of it?
feel like that happened during I can't talk, the Orion Wars, because I remember having the feeling of this is never going to end, and what was the point of losing so many good people when it's still going on? I remember feeling that, and
Yeah.
I know that one of the things I had to heal for me was this feeling of why bother? We're just going to lose again. Like, I really carried my feelings from that battle into this life, and I had to clear those because they were affecting me.
And one of the even bigger ones was we would defend this planet to either, in the end up having it being destroyed. And you're like, what was the point of all of us fighting to
Right, and
protect this
losing.
if
Right.
we were just going to lose it? Or the opposite was if like a ceasefire treaty was signed and they're like, okay, that world is going to them. And it's like, what was the point of defending it if you guys were just going to hand it over to them?
Right. I think a lot of that probably happened. I mean, I know from listening to Alex Collier and who else? I can't remember who else. But a lot of that was part of what happened. Just people just war isn't good. War just isn't good.
No. But
um
We actually are at the hour and a half mark.
We are. So, do you want to do a part 3 next time?
I think we should because,
Okay.
I mean, there's so much information in here, and I'd love to keep going, but I just feel like, how do you find a good spot to
No, there
break?
isn't one. So let's continue and do a part 3. Thank you so much
Yes,
for
thank
letting
you.
me share this. I'm sorry I'm so discombobulated. I just, I just had this surgery where I had a giant tumor removed right here, and you could see the swelling. But what happened when they had removed that tumor? Maybe I'll show you a picture on our next show, but my body had grown like flesh around something, and it had grown here. When they removed it, I had my abilities come back. So I found out after I had the surgery 2 months ago that it was an implant that had been in there that was attached to my organs and attached to the way my brain operated. And when they removed it, I was a completely different person again. So it's good. But yeah.
You're
Getting
gonna
over
laugh, but I had a session with Steven, and we had a part of it was taking old tech that was the My Labs were using to spy on, and
that.
I had a device here to hear that I would instinctively, when I was driving, if I felt like I needed to communicate, I would either tap
Would
here
you
or
would you
here.
like go to your face and then like, why
Yeah,
am I doing that? Wow.
and we had that removed.
Wow. So
So
yeah, they're what they do, like I know somebody else in the community, you probably know him too, who's dealing with tumors. And when I looked into that, his are implants that are ready to come out, and the only way you can get them out, this is what's cool about having Star Family, is your Star Family knows to deactivate it, but you can't always physically get them out because your Star Family can't do surgery on you, but they can set up a situation where, like for me, my implant got so infected, it ate through my jawbone, and the doctors had to do surgery. I wouldn't have been able to have the opportunity to have this implant out without having a tumor around it. So everything just kind of works in our favor. Sometimes things that are scary can actually be good things.
yeah,
But thank you for putting up with me. I still have a fever and hard to talk, but I got some information out. If anybody wants to find me, you can go to ericaamoreena.com and look me up there. And I think I have a list of all my other podcasts and information regarding targeting and abductions on that website.
and for those of you watching, I will be putting that website in the description, and do get the book.
Thank you so much. I can't
Thank
wait to do our
you.
next.
And so, with that, I'm going to say stay tuned for part 3. I can't promise when it'll come, but it is coming. And so, yes, that is something we're looking forward to. And thank you so much, Erica, for pre recording this and sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
And so, with that, we are going to say good night to
Good
everyone.
night, and show you an awesome outro.
Yes, here we go.